Welcome to the first of the Friday story series. Today's story takes place between Texas and Arkansas, and my family had a place up in Eureka Springs, and every summer for my whole childhood, right on up into college, we would go to Eureka Springs at least once a year, and usually 2 or 3 times a year. And sometimes we'd take a Caddy convertible, which was great. And other times, and most times, we were in my dad's Lincoln. My dad drove Lincolns his whole life. Every year he'd trade in for the next year Lincoln. And this particular story, we're in a 78 Lincoln, and it is a dark green 4-door tank of a car. And back in those days, Stuckey's was kind of the big thing. So you'd go to Stuckey's and you'd get your candied peanuts, and then there were places that made jerky, and then there were great chicken places on the way up. So the trip to Eureka Springs was almost as good as Eureka Springs. And so we were headed up that way, and there was a little, some kind of thing on the side of the road. I think they were selling just fruit and vegetables. And so my dad pulled over, and what he did, he hit a big rock, lots of rocks up in the Arkansas mountains. And we realized he'd knocked a hole in the bottom of the engine, and he was leaking oil. So my dad, very calm, I think I have his pocket knife here, he pulls out his pocket knife, and he walked over to the fruit stand and bought a potato. And then he sat there, leaned up against the car, and he just carved this potato into what looked like a plug. So it's, a potato, but at the end it was about the right size for the hole he knocked in the motor. So then he got up under the car, and he jammed this potato up into the hole as good as he could. And then he opened the trunk, where he had oil, of course, and I'm sure a shotgun and a fifth of whiskey, all the things you need when you travel. And he got the oil out, and he opened the hood and, put 4 quarts of oil or 5 quarts, whatever that thing held. Put the hood down and said, "Let's go." So we get in the Lincoln, and we drive on in until we hit probably Little Rock. It was the biggest town we hit after the incident. We pull into a gas station, and I can totally remember, it's got the stalls over here with the lifts, and then we were in the little tiny waiting room area with the blue vinyl chrome leather chairs and magazines about hot rods, and we're sitting there, and the Lincoln's up on the rack, and about 10 minutes later, this good old boy from Little Rock comes out, and he's got that potato in his hand, and it looks like it'd been crispy fried, from the heat of the motor. And he said, "Mister, I found your problem. There's a tater in your motor."